Hi, I'm Vooght, author of The Spirit in the Sky, Ancient Cosmological Gods, and Where in the World We Find Them. Ever since the dawn of time, humankind has worshipped the stars, the place in which gods reside, the scientific formula for life, and the very substance from which we are made. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, and the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff, Carl Sagan once famously quipped. Every time you look up into the night sky, you're witnessing unfathomably large nuclear explosions on such an epic scale and so mind-bogglingly far away that it's almost impossible to even comprehend. And this all goes on, almost unnoticed as we frantically shuffle our way through the grainy neon-lit streets, masking the enormity and sheer wonder of everything that is happening above us in the infinite realm of an ever-expanding universe. It's also far too easy and even somewhat arrogant to believe ourselves the very apex of sophisticated technological evolution in civilized society as we know it. Ancient cultures the world over, separated both by hugely vast distances and time, yet seemingly unconnected in a classical timeline of documented history, speak of a golden age, seemingly lost to an unknown epoch in the human story. These archaic customs also appear to share remarkably similar creation stories, belief systems, cosmological deities, architectural genius, and otherworldly shamanic ceremonies that are not yet fully understood or even largely dismissed as flights of fantasy, and even disregarded as mythology. Both the ancient Egyptians and the Maya believed that after ingesting very specific celebrated psychoactive substances, that they could commune with highly evolved spiritual entities or deities whom, as per creation stories, were said to reside within a constellation of Orion, a place in which dynastic pharaohs and Amazonian shaman can traverse the seemingly impossible boundaries of both space and time in search of knowledge and enlightenment, a place of cosmic wonder from where the gods are born. These same spiritually emancipating journeys into the realms of the gods and the metaphysical largely continue today and are somewhat religiously practiced by the indigenous peoples of the Amazon basin, South America. Of the 40,000 plus botanical varieties native to the Amazon rainforest, ayahuasca is a shamanic and ritualistic tool prepared from very too carefully selected types of vine and root bark. The resulting brew is a formula for essentially extracting a potent god-inducing entheogen compound, which is also a naturally occurring psychoactive supersubstance secreted within the endocrine system of the human brain. Thus far, and recently confirmed in laboratory rats, the pineal gland or mystical third eye is thought to be responsible for the natural secretion or production of N,N-dimethyltryptamine. More commonly known as DMT, this god-inducing psychedelic, I believe, is the gateway to one's soul and possibly answers the riddle that is human consciousness. Ancient Egyptian legend maintains that Osiris, god of resurrection and rebirth, resides within the constellation of Orion. This famous grouping of stars more commonly depicts a celestial hunter of the heavens, which most of us are readily familiar with. However, throughout ancient Egypt, Osiris is classically typified as the embodiment of all things acacia. How can this be? The botanical variety acacia, it transpires, has extremely high potentials of extractable DMT, a god-inducing entheogen compound. Clinical trials of this otherworldly, yet naturally occurring godlike psychedelic have dubbed N,N-dimethyltryptamine as the spirit molecule, and for good reason too. I propose that our ancient ancestry from an epoch lost had somewhat figured out this spirit molecule and also essentially, if not ingeniously, documented the profound nature of DMT through mythological tales and metaphoric allegories for the benefit of future generations of humanity. I further propose that a sophisticated and scientifically adept society, almost erased from the chapters of the human story, and during the perplexingly sudden and catastrophic fallout of the end of the last ice age, has successfully transferred the molecular structure of an otherwise divine supersubstance from the microcosm and systematically emblazoned it upon the macrocosm. The traditional constellation of Orion, Osiris, and the compound structure of DMT, from within the acacia, are a strikingly similar and irrefutable match. As above, so below. Throughout our study, it is my intention to simply demonstrate the unerring commonalities between so many otherwise disconnected ancient society and modern-day religions that it quite literally beggars belief. We're all essentially remembering the same thing. and during our descent into what appears to be an extremely misrepresented prehistory, we shall discover the remarkable higher science behind ancient Egyptian symbology. Furthermore, the omnipresent fingerprint of a civilization with superior construction methods, beyond our own, appear in some of the most remote yet geographically significant locations across the entire face of the planet, all of which serves to support the existence of a previously undocumented yet technologically adept society currently omitted from the chronology of the human story. Sadly, historians prefer to ignore such ancient origins and anomalies by simply dismissing them as coincidence, or worse still, mythological. There does, however, come a time when the clear and present evidence regarding certain mythologies, no matter how much the paradigm protecting crackpots dress it up, becomes rather more myth illogical. What becomes evidently apparent on this journey together is that maybe we're not the greatest after all, and that there is much to extract from the myths from which we can learn today. We go through an educational system which grinds the curious mind into submission. We're taught in a manner which dictates that all there is or was indeed to discover has already been discovered, and as such that everything you need to prepare for adult life is learnt right here. It's not until we leave this draconian institute in preparation for the mundane machine which inadvertently becomes life where we discover the fact of the matter. There really is no such thing as grown-ups. Absolutely no one has the slightest inkling of what's going on, or worse still, what it's all about. We're all kind of looking at each other, confidently nodding in one another's direction, like we get it, while subconsciously we're no more enlightened than the bright-eyed minds we'd hope to inspire with our empty promises of wealth and wisdom. We grow up learning that psychedelic compounds, which spawned a generation of epically creative and talented musicians and artisans, are basically off limits, bad news, and dangerous. Indeed, I believe they're dangerous too. I believe they're inherently dangerous to the status quo. In the 1960s and 70s, our imagination took us to the moon. We saw in the summer of love, explored the boundaries of both outer and inner space alike, and returned from both relatively safe. I believe that DMT is a core ingredient regarding the riddle that is human consciousness. I also propose that our ancient ancestry knew this and have methodically and systematically ingrained its mysticism and symbology into the very fabric of the mythical series of tales and shamanic customs which we still eagerly continue to discredit today. As we shall discover, the ancients believed that gods were all around us, inside us even, and that the capabilities of the human experience were not strictly limited to the material bonds of the body either. In the 21st century, things which appear to be stranger than fiction are still, by and large, listed as so, although the confirmation that particles of matter such as photons do in fact act as both a wave and a particle, or both and neither at the same time, is enough to suggest that we don't quite know it all after all. The resulting infamous double slit experiment suggests that the mere act of observing a photon particle with the intention of measuring its path between one of either two evenly spaced slits to its final destination, being that of a backlit wall, the experiment's outcomes are significantly altered purely by the act of observing it. In short, the photons of light act arbitrary to what you would expect should you decide to install or remove the observational apparatus. Thus matter, whether it be biological or inanimate, is aware. It is consciously aware of the fact that it's being observed, and thus acts accordingly. Science knows much for which it can explain, though should we consider the terminology such as dark matter or dark energy to be accurate, nothing could be further from the truth. Of the observable known universe and everything which is encompassed therein, dark energy accounts for a massive 74%, and dark matter 22%. The remaining 4% is allotted to the fundamental understanding of the lesser exotically named components of the universe, namely atoms. What isn't very clear is that the vast 96%, which basically represents everything else, we have absolutely no idea what it is. Esteemed astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson rather jovially suggests that the majority 96% may as well be called Fred and Wilma, as we have no knowledge regarding its properties, potentials, or anything. Zero. Only the barney rubble with such an underwhelming statement is that it ultimately underlines the infancy of our own scientific wisdom. We're basically only 4% enlightened. With this in mind, is it beyond the realms of plausibility to suggest that our ancestry may have known more about the nature of the cosmos and the human experience than our egotistically damning and stereotypical primitive label current mainstream opinion typically allows? My spirits in the sky hypothesis proposes a radical yet logical new angle regarding the ancient Hermetic adage, which is as above, so below. The following presentations are dedicated to explaining how I believe the ancient Egyptian deity Osiris, god of resurrection, is a metaphor for DMT, and that the constellation of Orion and subsequent mythology surrounding it describes the molecular structure of a naturally occurring god-inducing entheogen compound, and where in nature a sophisticated society may indeed find it. Once again, I'm Vooght, and The Spirit in the Sky is available via Amazon. To follow this research on other multimedia platforms, I can be found via the tag @VootRN. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. That's the spirit.